Good evening, everybody. It's John here from Tutor2, welcoming you along to another of our Economics A-Levels live stream. And tonight we're concentrating on poverty and inequality. Massive warm welcome to those of you who are joining us live. Just having a look at my little clock there to see how many of you are here with us. Some of you are on half term. I hope you're having a nice week. Many of you have just returned, so I hope you had a good week and are getting ready and getting all geared up for those exams, which are not too far away. Big warm welcome, of course, to the dream team tonight. I've got Jeff on the left-hand side of the screen and Lisa on the right-hand side. Good evening, both.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm really enjoying half term, John.
Jeff is particularly he was hard at work last week and he's hard at work this week, so he's enjoying his half term of sorts. Welcome to you both. Quick reminder, in case there is anybody out there who's never joined one of these before, which I struggle to believe, we are about to do about 30 minutes or so of fast-paced activities. We're going to be using a little PowerPoint presentation as the backdrop of those questions. That PowerPoint will be available to you as soon as this live stream has completed. We are, of course, recording this so you can watch this over again. And if you are watching this in replay, welcome to you as well, of course. And you can slow down this video at any point if you want to take a little bit longer over the questions. If you find tonight useful, please do give us a thumbs up in YouTube. That always helps us get our message out there as well. Jeff is pointing in the right direction. I think we might be ready though. Shall we get cracking both?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, let's go for it. So let's start with 5 multiple choice questions. They're all on poverty and inequality. One of those topics tonight that you can bring into virtually any question, certainly most essays, as a poverty inequality aspect to your evaluation. Here's our first question. Do have a go if you're live with us tonight and post your answer in the chat window. We'll pick out some of the best answers as we go through. Which of the following means equity in the distribution of income? What do we think? Is it an equal share of national income? Is it share capital owned by individuals? Equity. Each person having an opportunity to improve their income. Fairness in the distribution. Answers coming through. A little bit of a difference of opinion here. Quite a few people saying A, and a good number saying D. And Nabi says there are 2 types of equity in economics. Nabi, straight in, we're talking about the vertical and horizontal equity there, which goes beyond this question, Nabi, but a super point. Most people saying D. Let's double check with our scoreboard. It is D. Equity essentially in economics means fairness. It's not quite the same as equality. So if you talk about an equitable distribution of income, an equitable distribution of opportunity, it hints at fairness. Of course, fairness involves a value judgment. Question number 2. A person will suffer from absolute poverty when what is the case? They're not self-sufficient. They have no income. They lack access to basic resources such as food, shelter, and clothing. They have a low standard of living relative to, compared to the average in an economy. Answers coming through. And by the way, it's great to see our regulars as well as our new people joining the student collective as we head into February and March and April. Felix and Philip and what have you, Toby and Amir, I think all have the right answer, which is C. Absolute poverty, also known as extreme poverty. Of course, it may vary by the context, the state of development of the country. The great Amartya Sen, one of the progenitors of the Human Development Index, talked about economic freedom, having basic access, basic essentials, food, shelter, and clothing. Question number 3. One reason why data on nominal GDP per head, that's really quite important. One reason why nominal GDP per head may suggest a lower living standard than is actually the case in a country is what? So why might the data on nominal GDP per head suggest a lower living standard than actually is the reality? So we're looking here for a sort of counterpoint. What do we think here? Why might nominal money GDP per head, that's GDP measured at current prices, quite a big variation here in answers. A lot of people saying A. Of course, if you were to take inflation into account, that would reduce living standards even further. So we're looking for a factor which might actually hint that living standards are actually higher than the published data. And the correct answer, a few people have got it, including Toby and Victor, yes, Toby and Charlie and Seth. The answer is B. Fewer hours in the sense you've got to take into account the working hours, the work leisure trade off. So if people are working fewer hours, that will reduce GDP, but of course there's a commensurate rise in leisure time. 2 more questions. Here we go. Question number 4. The Gini coefficient. Hopefully you know how to define that, explain it, and assess it. The Gini coefficient for original and disposable income in the UK over that 40-year period both show a steady increase. I think the Gini for the UK is about 0.35 now. Which of the following shown there might have caused income inequality to increase over that 40-year time horizon? So there has been a rise in income inequality. Most of that happened, by the way, in the first 10 years of that data series. What's the best explanation maybe for the rise in income inequality over the period? What do we think? Quite a bit of, there's obviously the 2 factors there each. You're looking for a combination which both are coherent explanations. Katie thinks it's D. Anea and Fatima both suggesting it's D. George and James and Toby. And our great friend Random Banana very rarely slips up on these kind of questions. He got his answer in by the skin of his teeth. Thank you, Lisa. It is indeed D. Living costs, of course. Living costs, food costs, the cost of living crisis typically have a regressive effect on living standards, on real living standards, particularly for those families on low incomes, with large families less able to cope. Higher numbers of pensioners, well, until the triple lock, I guess, there was an increase in pensioner poverty. That's now been addressed. Question 5. Oh, a little diagram question. Have a look at that one. The diagram shows the observed relationship between GDP per capita and Gini coefficient, some sort of measure of income inequality. What does the relationship suggest? Now, to give you a clue here, the answer is either A, B, C, or D. I hope that helps. So what does the curve suggest about the relationship? Answers coming through. John is very cleverly managing to put some of the answers on the screen. A couple of people saying C. We got Gavin is coming with the right answer, I think. And a lot of people saying C. It's not C. Economic growth, of course, drives GDP per capita up. Now, what does that curve suggest? It is actually, for those of you who have got it, it's the Kuznets curve. The answer is A. As income per capita goes up, initially income inequality rises, but then beyond a certain point, income inequality may start to fall. This is suggested by something called the Kuznets curve. It's not on every spec, but if you have covered the Kuznets curve, it's a good one to look at if you get a question on development and growth economics. So well done on those 5 questions. Lots of people getting A in the end. Over to Lisa for the next round of questions.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Okay, we've started thinking about policies in some of those questions, but now you've got to sort this list of policies into those that you think are likely to reduce inequality and those that are likely to make inequality worse. You might imagine there can't be a government in the country that would deliberately go about trying to make inequality worse, but policies might do that inadvertently. So John's going to kick us off on the clock. Use the letters and perhaps have a go at putting some answers in the chat. So some of them here, capping the number of children that can get child benefit. What's that going to do to income inequality? Issuing meal vouchers to eligible children in school holidays. Very much something that Marcus Rashford's been pushing. Removing the cap on banker bonuses. What might that do to income inequality? That's happened fairly recently. Making it more expensive to go to university. What might that do to income inequality? And increasing the minimum wage. How might that affect income inequality? So have a go at putting some of those policies. What do you think? Is introducing a bedroom tax? You may not be aware of what that is. If you live in social housing and you've got a spare bedroom, you get your benefits cut. What's that likely to do to income inequality? Okay, we've got some good responses in here. Random Bananas back in the house. House to Fall is back in the house as well. Let's have a look to see if these are indeed the correct categorizations. Press the button, John. That's fantastic. Lots of you are getting the right answers here. The increase in the minimum wage is likely to reduce income inequality. I'm sure you're all aware it's going to go up to £11.44 in April from £10.42. Particularly helpful because it's aimed at the lowest paid workers in, hospitality, retail, social care. It genuinely helps lift their incomes. The triple lock state pension. Pensioners tend to be relatively poor, but their pensions go up in line with either wage increases, inflation, or 2.5%, whichever is the highest. So that clearly helps reduce income inequality. If we look on the right-hand side, just picking up on a couple of those, bankers' bonuses, the cap on them has been removed. It was at, you could only have a bonus that was the same size as your salary. That's now been removed. Increasing tuition fees, they're currently 9,250, but increasing that would reduce access to university, making it more expensive to go, to give yourself options of having better jobs in the future. So well done, everyone. Really great choice of policies there, getting them in the right place at the right time. And so we're going to return to Jeff now for Give Me Three.
Yeah, we'll do Give Me Three in a second. Before we set the clock off, John, somebody just asked a question, what's the triple lock? Roll Cake asked that question. Triple lock is a policy brought in, probably a decade or so ago, whereby the state pension, which kicks in if you're 66 or 67 soon, it goes up each year either by inflation or by 2.5%, or the growth of wages and earnings, whichever is the higher. So it's basically a way to kind of lock in the real or the relative value of the state pension. It's been very popular amongst pensioners for some reason. It's actually helped to reduce pensioner poverty, but it's becoming super expensive as we age, and some of us are aging more than others as I look myself in the mirror.
Speak
This is
for
Give Me
yourself.
Three. Sorry, Liz, what was that?
Speak for yourself.
I was speaking for myself. I always do. Give me three. This is the idea. If you can think of three reasons, three causes, three consequences, three policies, you really can't go wrong on an exam. So this is why we use this lovely activity called Give Me Three. Give me three causes of inequality in the UK. Is it 30 seconds here or a minute? I'm not sure. Let's find out. So can you type into the chat window what you think are some of the main causes of income inequality in the UK, root causes, structural causes? Post them in the chat window, and John is ready and willing to pick out some of the really good answers. It's 30 seconds, so you probably won't have time to type in a lot. If you're watching on replay, just press the pause button and try and write down three potential causes of inequality or rising relative poverty. So in here talking about regressive taxes, which is good, random banana, talking about geographical disparities, Psycho talking about high cost of living, Luca talking about the minimum wage being too low, Toby mentioning VAT, some good points there. James talking about technological progress, globalization and commodity price cycles. Very sophisticated answer there, linking external global factors to rising inequality. Superb. Joshua talks about regressive tax, a low minimum wage, and a low productivity, maybe reflected in a kind of low wage economy. Labour and mobility, picked up by a lot of people, skills gaps. Like Victor's answer there, poverty traps, a regressive tax system, and a weak education system. You probably have to be a little bit more specific on the third point, maybe deficiencies in human capital or problems in terms of lack of childcare. Be as specific as you can be, but three superb points there. And Alice talks about structural unemployment. That's super important, Alice. One of the biggest predictors of income inequality in the UK is whether you have at least one, possibly two or more people out of work in a family, so-called workless households, people where there's nobody in work at all. Here are our three answers, building on the superb points from the collective. The increase in the cost of housing to buy and rent. Keep in mind, this is one of those synoptic topics, the cost of mortgages, the cost of rented housing in some parts of the country. Just the average rent takes up 30, 40, 50% of disposable incomes. I really like point 2, the decline in trade union membership, and link that perhaps to the growth of the rise of monopoly power in the labour market, where in theory employers can offer relatively low wages because of the diminution of collective bargaining power. Random comes in again with transition to tertiary sectors leading to unemployment and less exporting, and that ties in nicely with the kind of globalization and trade explanations. And indirect taxes, broadly speaking, indirect taxes are regressive. Okay, brilliant. Back to Lisa for the, and this make this a really important point. This is a very random, a totally random connection spinner. So what will it be tonight?
Who knows? Before I do this, somebody asked about the bedroom tax.
Yeah.
It's not a tax. It's not a tax as such. If you live in
Okay.
social housing or council housing, if you've got a spare bedroom, i.e., one that's not being occupied by a child or someone you're caring for, your benefits get reduced. So it's called a bedroom tax, but actually what it means is that your benefits get cut if you've got a spare bedroom. It's very unpopular. Okay, let's have a go at the connection spinner, the random connection spinner. Off we go, John. What are we going to stop on? Let's hope it's a good one. What is the impact on relative poverty in an economy of a lower national minimum wage rate? What do we think is going to be the impact? Is it going to worsen relative poverty, or is it going to have no effect? How do we make that connection between lower national minimum wage rates and relative poverty? Okay, so with somewhat lower national minimum wage in real terms, well, one might argue if at the moment the national minimum wage is going up in real terms because it's rising above the rate of inflation. But very good, Mr. Riley, to make a reference to real and nominal. Great answers here, talking about it will worsen poverty, it will lower standards of living. What have we got as our connection here, John? What have we said is the connection? It will clearly increase relative poverty. Lower earners will have less disposable income. We know, as we've already mentioned, that the national minimum wage really supports those people who are in low paid sectors, and therefore you are making them very much worse off when they're probably already only just about managing. So it will increase as lower earners will have less disposable income, maybe not able to just buy the necessities of life if they are working in retail or hospitality. Excellent. There's some great points coming in. It means these people will be spending less. Relative poverty in the UK is measured if you are on 60% or less of median income as a household. So relative poverty would be if your household earns less than about 60% of roughly £33,000. That's great. Thanks very much. Okay, John. Another spin. What will it be? So higher spending on income support. So more spending on welfare, perhaps increasing those benefits that are wrapped up in universal credit. What will that do to relative poverty? How will it impact on relative poverty? Will it have a positive impact or a negative impact? What do we think? Let's see if we can get a couple of responses in the chat. You've done brilliantly so far. So what do you think will happen here if we have higher spending on income support? What's the likely impact going to be on relative poverty? Will it improve it? Will it move people out of poverty? or will it make it worse? So we've got great examples here. Reduced relative poverty, because these people will have higher incomes, which will enable them to spend more. Very good point here. Higher spending on income support. It may not necessarily translate into a higher cost of labour, but one might be concerned about if people have got more income support, they might be less willing to work. That's one possible interpretation. What are we saying in the connection box, John? Okay, so we're agreeing that ultimately higher spending on income support will help those who are operating below the median income. Remember, you can still receive benefits when you're in work. There are many benefits that top up your wages. So that's worth bearing in mind. Some excellent points here. Great stuff. Okay, let's move on, and it's back to Jeff.
Yeah, Lisa makes that last point there about working poverty. That's people who are in work, or families with at least one person in work, but whose income still falls below the relative poverty line, 60% of median income. And working poverty in this country, I think, is one of the big issues at the moment in terms of incentives and tax revenues. There's so many families that are in work, but still poor. Super important. Bubble quiz coming up. The usual bubble quiz, we ask you a question and you have to say in the chat window how many of these answers are correct. It could be 1, could be 2, 3, 4, could be none of them. Which of the following team economics are examples of a transfer payment, or which of the following are examples of transfer payments? So how well do you know your welfare system? Adam straight in with A, C, D. Raj thinks A and C. Pete agrees. Iad has the right answer. Congratulations to him. So we think it's all three, isn't it? Let's have a look. Welfare payments, yes. Well, clearly welfare, including universal credit and unemployment benefit, yes. Both transfer payments. State pension. A state pension is a transfer payment. So you work very hard for decades, and then eventually you can take the state pension. Spending on infrastructure is capital spending rather than transfer payments. The answer there was A, B, C. Here's our next bubble quiz coming up. Here we go. Which of the following are examples of income and not wealth? Now, this is a slightly trickier one. Profits flowing to shareholders, wages and salaries from jobs, rental income from property, savings in bank accounts. Which of the following are examples of income rather than wealth? Oftentimes examiners want you to know that difference between income and wealth. One is a flow concept, one is a stock idea. Toby and Pete and Fergus and Gavin, Nargis, Chloe got the right answer there coming through. Yeah, correct. It's A, B, and C. Profits in form of dividends, wages and salaries for most people, the biggest source of income. Rental property for many people, buy-to-let landlords and things. Savings, of course, is wealth, but the interest from savings is income. Next question, number 3. Which of the following policies are likely to lower inequality in the UK? Take a moment. Which of these do you think are right? Which of the following policies are likely to reduce inequality in the UK? Cutting corporation tax, cutting the standard rate of VAT, cutting the rate of inheritance tax, the abolition of the zero-rated band of goods for VAT. The zero-rated band includes things like groceries and children's clothes. Me thinks B, A, B, C. Jasan thinks just B. What do we think? Which are you most happy about? Toby thinks B and C. I guess when it says inequality here, I guess we have to consider both income and wealth inequality. So what do we think? Victor just thinks it's B. A couple of people think it's more than that. Robert Doozy thinks it's B. Here's our suggested answer. We think the main answer there is just B. The others would have little impact on income or wealth inequality. Inheritance tax cut actually would worsen it. And getting rid of a zero-rated band means you'd start charging VAT on things like children's clothes, books and magazines, and so on and so forth. Although they bring in VAT on school fees, that might have a progressive effect. on income distribution, or they're marginal at best, probably. Number 4, our final bubble quiz question. Is it the final one? Or what's next, John?
No, next is that
It's
there
me.
are only 3. Yeah, there are only 3 questions, I'm afraid, Jeff.
I
Just
think
the
we're short.
three.
John, we're short. Oh, we always have 4 bubble quiz questions. We always have 4.
Apologies.
Well,
Jeff.
they were very difficult ones, Jeff. So they were very challenging today.
I've got up early to do 4 bubble quiz questions. I can't believe it.
Oh,
I am so sorry, Jeff.
next week.
Next week.
I'll give you an extra one once we've finished this live stream. You can have another.
Thank you
Perfect.
very much. Appreciate that. Back to you, Lisa.
Okay, so weighing up the pros and cons of policies and talking about, whether or not they'll be effective is a really important evaluative skill. So we're going to have a look at the advantage and disadvantages of using progressive taxation to reduce income inequality. So progressive taxation, we normally encounter it with income tax. So we have a tax-free allowance of roughly 12,500, and then you have bands of 20, 40, 45%. Essentially, the more you earn, the greater the proportion of your income that you pay in tax. So what might an advantage be of using progressive taxation to reduce income inequality be? So we're going to think about advantages first. What might an advantage be? I've got a great answer over here saying if you're cutting income tax, you're reducing the burden on individuals with lower incomes. That's fantastic. So cutting income tax is clearly one way of addressing income inequality and of using progressive taxation. Cutting the base rate, for example, of 20% might be good. Let's have a look at what we've got on the scales, John. Okay, so we've got a couple of things there. In fact, we've made, I think, even better points in the chat about this. But first of all, we've talked about if you are cutting tax for those on lower incomes, they're going to spend it all. They've got a higher marginal propensity to consume, and that's going to help stimulate aggregate demand. If you are relatively poor, any extra income you get, you're going to spend. If you're relatively rich, if you get an extra 100 quid, you might save it rather than spend it. So if you cut income tax for those that are on the lower bands, it's likely that they're going to spend it, and that will be beneficial for aggregate demand and perhaps economic growth. So that's thinking about the bottom end. But what about if you raise tax at the top end? What benefit might there be there? And clearly, if you've raised more tax revenue by taxing the rich, you will have a pot of income that you can use to redistribute. In other words, you might be able to redistribute it through improved health or education, or perhaps more benefits. So that's a possibility. So when you think about redistribution, do remember you could be cutting taxes at the bottom end or raising them at the top end. It gives you, it gives you those options. And let's look at some disadvantages then. And we've already got some fantastic ones coming in. Random Banana is, at the top of his game, talking about higher taxes possibly leading to disincentive effects. So let's have a look at what we've got on the scales for disadvantages. Absolutely brilliant. We've got this idea of disincentivizing people to earn more. Luca's got that there as an answer. House to Fall has got that there as an answer. Absolutely right. The Laffer curve is the piece of theory that we look at to relate changing tax revenues to changing levels of economic activity. Lots of people have quite a lot of doubts about whether the Laffer curve really exists, but it's a good bit of theory to chuck in if you're trying to evaluate the use of progressive taxation. There's also a suggestion that there might be a brain drain. In other words, it might encourage people to move to economies with lower tax rates. I'm always a bit cynical about that, because if you've moved to the UK and you're settled and your kids are at school, etc., it would have to be one hell of a rise in tax to make you relocate. So proceed with caution when you think about talking about increasing taxes leading to everyone leaving the country. It's probably only going to be a few. But overall, that's fantastic. Some great comments in the chat, as always. They seem very much A-level ready.
Very, very good answers. Yeah, absolutely. I'm just having a look at some more still coming in, Lisa. Some more disadvantages. So wonderful. Thank you so much to everybody who's participated tonight and given us some really, really strong responses. As I said just before we started, if you found tonight useful, please do give us a thumbs up in YouTube. That'll be really, really valuable to us. We do have one more of these sessions before we take a little hiatus whilst the team goes out and delivers some revision workshops. I'll give you a bit more details about that next week if you're interested in that. So next week I think we're on financial markets. So if you're trying to do a bit of revision on financial markets, do join us then. Massive thank you of course goes to Jeff and Lisa. Wonderful stuff as always from, as I said before, the dream team. So well done to and thank you to both of you. A quick reminder that the PowerPoint that we've been using tonight will be available in about 10 seconds time as soon as I've pressed the finish button, and this has been recorded so you can always rewatch it all over again. Okay, good night to everybody and see you again very, very soon. Good evening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.